You're live.
We're live. Senate Transportation. It's Thursday, March 21st. And we're talking about the House Transportation, page 868, with Ledge Council. Where were we?
We are beginning section 16, which is on page 27 of the copy that you have. It still says bill is introduced in the copy you have, and there's the only change is the one that I mentioned yesterday.
Okay. And was this 16 the one that was tied to an early electric bike? Or that's
It's 18 really, that's, yes.
Okay.
This one is about, they were hoping to beef up the eligibility requirements by making sure that there was that you all receive a summary of the post-voucher sampling audits so that you can keep track of whether or not the program is fulfilling its goal of providing incentives to people who are financially in need of them.
And Michelle, can I ask you a question?
I'm sorry.
That's fine. No, yeah, I'm sure. I wondered if we do this voucher sampling for the other incentive programs, there's only the electric.
We do audit sampling for all of the incentive programs. All of them have a self-certification
But
component.
this change would only pertain to the electric.
Yeah, I think there was a concern that there was a desire to have more specificity in statute that we were doing this sampling for e-bikes.
Okay. Do we have any questions about that? Do we care if they do more sampling? I assume you guys were okay with it?
We were fine.
This isn't okay?
So we'll close out section 16. Section 17.
So the agency already has a requirement of having an annual report on the effectiveness of the state's vehicle incentive programs. This would amend that annual report by also requiring the report to address the effectiveness of the marketing and outreach efforts and to include recommendations for improvements to marketing and outreach.
So that's this line on the top of
Page 28 and page, yeah, it's also on page 28, lines 6 to 7, and the top of page 29.
That's a good question.
Yes.
Is this passed the House yet, and were there any amendments on the floor?
The only amendment was the one that I mentioned yesterday, which was to remove that transfer from the central garage fund to the transportation fund. That's on the bottom of page 6, subsection E. And that is simply because the Appropriations Committee likes to keep all of the transfers in one bill. And so that subsection will get moved to the big bill.
It did pass.
It passed yesterday, yes.
Was that third reading yesterday?
Is it a roll call?
Yes.
No, there were no roll calls and very few questions.
So Michelle, did the agency feel like adding to the report the effectiveness of the marketing outreach programs is something that was warranted?
I feel like that's sort of an ongoing analysis that we do to continue to sort of analyze the uptake, analyze market conditions that are impacting the utilization of the programs. So we're doing it anyways, so it's fine. This is the gist.
So we'll close that section out. Okay.
Section 18, which begins on page 29, line 9, is the section that I said relates to section 6 in some ways. There are two parts to this section 18. The first is that there was testimony that the e-bike incentive program is going to run out of money before the end of the this fiscal year. And since it is e-bike use is somewhat season specific in Vermont, The subsection A is authorizing the Secretary of Transportation, not requiring, authorizing the Secretary of Transportation to use up to $50,000 of fiscal year 24 money that is for any of the other vehicle incentive programs between now and, or between when this takes effect and the end of this fiscal year. What is potentially affected, I mean, that obviously is something that you have to decide what you want, but also what's potentially affected by section 6 of the bill is that it says that if the secretary does take any money, transfer any money from fiscal year 24 funds from those vehicle incentive programs, then that amount needs to get subtracted from the fiscal year 25 appropriation to the e-bike program to backfill those other vehicle incentive programs. So if you, the obvious thing is if you don't appropriate any money in section 6, then this can't be backfilled.
Right, can't be backfilled, and the agency probably wouldn't then move any money over to it. Well, they could, but then they wouldn't have any money to backfill it.
Exactly.
They probably wouldn't do it. So I don't think we should close this one out, but yes, Senator Schindler.
I agree with that. I would just say on e-bikes, I'm not against e-bikes. I just don't see the best role for our limited state dollars to continue to fund this program. I think people with e-bikes with lowest incomes are best served by us supporting public transportation, because you just can't rely on an e-bike all year long. And when you can't use your e-bike or any bike to get to your work, you're going to need a bus. And so I just think this program, I'm ready to just stop subsidizing e-bike purchases, because I don't think it's where it is getting the best bang for our buck, both with carbon emissions as well as with helping those with the least. So I don't know how that factors into all this, and I don't know if the committee's there too, but I just don't think we need to spend more staff time, limited staff time on this. And if that means eliminating this section and the other one, I'd support that.
Okay.
I feel like I'm going on a crusade against e-bikes.
No, I think I get what you're saying.
Those 450 voters are gonna be upset with you.
Okay.
So there's no decision about that one. You can leave that one open for the time being.
Well, I think, yeah, we're not gonna close it out, and I guess, I can't remember exactly what we decided on the other one, but so
That was just like
we'll probably take it out, but
okay.
we'll come back to it.
Section 19 is about the other vehicle incentive programs, and this is giving the secretary the authority again, but not requiring the secretary to transfer up to 50% of any of the monies in fiscal year 25 among the various vehicle incentive programs.
So it's like 18, but 18 had this backfill. This does no backfill.
Except this is, yeah, but this is also fiscal year 25 monies as opposed to fiscal year 24 monies.
Okay. I'm fine with this, you guys fine with this?
I'm having a computer problem, so I'm not following along as well as I should be. Printouts. I don't, but I just would think Jim Kitchell would probably have, if anybody can see any concerns with this, be hers.
And this wasn't something that the agency asked for, but they just thought.
I should identify myself, Michelle Boomhauer, Agency of Transportation. This was language that the agency endorsed because there has just been sort of a variability between the programs. Mileage Smart took off at the end of last year, and we had an unusual, sort of spike in requests, and so we want to be able to maximize all the programs. As you heard from Jane Lazarchuk yesterday from ANR, one of the things that we hope that the EPA carbon reduction grant will bring is more money for incentives. And so we're trying to bridge that period of time with the monies that we have until maybe we receive more grant monies to continue these programs.
Okay. Did you have something to say on this?
Sure. So Logan Hoover, Joint Fiscal. I just add that they did something similar to this in the BAA, and this would just give them the authority to move those funds around. Right.
So for this, we wouldn't have to make those BAA kind of changes because they
We'll give them a bit in BAA, right?
we did to mileage smart, yeah. Okay, so we can close out section 19.
Question.
Section 20 begins on page 31, and it both amends and adds to 19 VSA chapter 29, which is about vehicle incentive programs. So the first change is just one of definition on page 31, line 5. It's defining what electric vehicle supply equipment or EVSE means, and that it has the same meaning as it does in Title 30. Section 2906 would be a new section within chapter 29, and it's page 31, line 15. And this is setting out what the goals of EVSE is, by making sure that there are EVSE charging ports available to the public. And the specifically on page 31, line 18, one of the goals is that those ports will be available within 3 driving miles of every exit of the interstate. And on top of page 3, the second goal is that the charging ports would be within 25 driving miles of another level 3 EVSE charging port. And the third goal is that those charging ports are co-located with or within a safe and both walkable and rollable distance of publicly accessible amenities. And again, I would point out that these are goals, not requirements.
So we had goals before. And then I remember when the feds had their requirements, that kind of superseded their goals because there were more charging stations. So what happened to those original goals? Were those in session?
There are goals in session law, and they are being repealed in section 21, which is on page 33. I don't have a comparison of those goals. I do think that these are.
I think it's pretty close to this, if not the same, because I think that the feds wanted 1 mile, this was 3 miles. I think we started with maybe 50 miles between charging stations, and then we changed it to 25 or something.
So I think I can clarify. So this section is putting into statute from session law the actual goals, and we have recommended now 3 miles, even though the federal limit is 1 mile, because we have found that there are locations at interstate interchanges where it's impossible to get the 1 mile mark. So we would use other resources other than NEVI to accomplish this goal. And yeah, I think originally we started out at 50, but then we did settle on 25 to codify or to put in session law, and now we're codifying that in statute. So the agency is fine with everything that runs through line 14 on page 32.
Okay, so that co-location, we didn't have that before, I think, in the session law goals, but it makes sense, other than we're not exactly sure what rollable means, but we get the general idea. Jim?
I remember some conversation where they were talking, where I think you were saying, Michelle, there was a spot that was 3.1 or 3.2 miles, which was too far. What about a caveat? And I know this might be silly. If it could be more than 3 miles, like up to 4 miles, if it's from the interstate, if it's on a decline, so they can roll in if the batteries are dead. Would we want to?
Well, since it's a goal, I don't think we need to be too prescriptive. I can say, yeah, it was a goal to get to 3, but we got to 3.3.
Yeah.
Because, that's where especially when you have to co-locate in this safe walkable distances of these amenities, it's really limiting where you put it. Plus the power, where there's 3-phase power and things like that.
So the 3 miles won't prevent some rain getting grants.
And if they can only use the federal money if it's within 1 mile, or they get a waiver. So, and then the second part of this
Is
2907.
Is 2907, which is annual reporting, and it sounds as though the agency is fine with subdivision 1, which is lines 11 through 14 on page 32. And again, I'm sorry, I forgot to to check these this morning, but I believe that this is very similar to what is currently
Right.
required in session law. And then 15 subdivision 2 is also to file a report on additional efforts to deploy EDSC throughout the state grant programs. And that would again be an annual report. The third report would be page 33, line 1, and that's on the current conditions of EDSC available to the public and deployed through the assistance of state or federal funding. Subsection B, which is on line 8, says that these 3 reports can be combined into a single report. And then you just related, section 21, which is page 31, would repeal the goals and that report of the annual map that's currently in session law.
And then they said that it's required any year that the state EDSC grant program provides funding. Would that include the federal money, or are they saying it's state program?
Any money, so it could be EPA money, it could be NEVI money. And I think to that point, section 2 and also section 3 apply to entities outside of the Agency of Transportation.
Right, that's what I wondered, because
So we prefer not to have to find out from any entity, BGS, ACCD, et cetera. And like, if that information is desired, then we would want to have those entities named and doing their own reporting. And as far as section 3 at the top of page 33 goes, we certainly have the information about the charging stations we are deploying.
right.
And we're happy to report out on the condition of those, but not all EDSC throughout the state that's been
Right.
funded.
Right. So I'm proposing we strike 2, since we can't really make AO2 do all efforts. That would probably be ACCD. And I assume they're doing a report on their grant anyway. But
I can't speak to them there.
there's a question, it's really ACCD, I guess BGS as well as doing some public.
Yeah.
So for now, let's strike section 2, this report about all, because we just say if you can do that. And then unless we find out more information about what the others, maybe they're already doing reports. Section 3, I think would be helpful, but we'll just say only for AOT's stations.
Okay, Michelle, I'll talk with you about how to make sure we.
And then B, I think is fine too, saying that you can combine them with other reports. Not with other reports, I guess it's these 2. Shall be prominently posted on the website.
I guess I would maybe strike ACCD as well there. I mean,
Yeah, fine, it'd be posted on Agent Nutrition. Right, unless we're gonna have them do their own report. So yeah, we'll strike agency of transportation. And that was, is that Bronwyn?
yeah,
I mean, it seemed like she had a pretty detailed report on the grants they had given before.
oh yeah.
Some people like to require reports even though they're getting a report. Okay, so that was all of section 1. Clear on that?
Yes.
21 repeals that goals. And I guess that also talked about making a map, which was in the prior section, so we can close that out, section 21. Section 21 closed out. Section 22, another report on EDSC.
The closed one.
Yeah.
Yeah, 22 is requiring the agency in consultation with the agencies of agriculture, food and markets, and commerce and community development to prepare a written plan to secure federal funding for how to fund and maintain the EVSE necessary for Vermont to meet the portion of the goals in the climate action plan. And that it's a one-time written plan to be filed with you no later than next January 15th.
Michelle,
I'm sorry, which section are we on?
22.
22. This,
Thank you. For the NEVI, do you have 2 reports for NEVI?
we do reporting for NEVI, yeah.
It seems to be saying kind of like when you do your NEVI report, I don't know, have something added about funding and maintaining.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to clarify, the comprehensive energy plan and the climate action plan do not have specific targets for EVSE.
So you'd have to like,
We just back, in terms of trying to understand how much EVSE we need in the state, we do a back calculation out of sort of formulas we understand related to the necessity for EVSE based on the number of vehicles deployed in a system. And so, I think we can certainly talk about that, that X percentage of the EVSE needed to meet the 2030 goal, it has been deployed, and that percentage meets the, number of vehicles in the fleet currently or whatever. There's ways to get at this. So
it seems to be a not helpful report in my opinion.
I don't know that it, I think
But the only thing that's different is the funding part, I guess.
yeah.
I assume in your NEVI plan, you talk about maintenance of the charging.
Yeah,
infrastructure.
and that goes to the section, that goes to this number 3 on top page 33. So,
Right, that's about that, but it seems, but so the only thing is about the funding, that you would have to add a thing about how you're going to secure federal funding.
yeah, it's kind of like, well, how are you gonna secure federal funding to maintain the roadway into the future?
We're gonna apply for.
We're gonna keep applying for funding until we've met our goal. So I'm not sure that it's, I think any committee could ask us anytime, like, how are we doing? Do we need more of an EVSE or have we built enough? I don't know.
Okay, so we're closing, well, we're gonna get rid of 22.
Yeah.
We don't need it. However, back to, let's go back one section, but section 20, on page 32, when there's this report with a map and on the state's efforts to meet the federal plan, is there a value of also adding the section 2906 goals, the state goals? Because the NEVI plan is slightly different than the state goals.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So on line 12, we could say efforts to meet a federally required EVID plan and goals as in 2906.
Yeah, that's fine. I think that would work.
Can you get that done?
Yes.
So then, and then that makes section 22 even less needed.
Mhm.
Right, that.
If this was the conference committee, you have in your mind would be arguments to strike these, because it's not clear to me what our rationale is.
But yes, and I think for 22, it's just not needed. It's making the department do some extra work that has work, not enough value to warrant the extra work, and we're not gonna.
I think they forget that we have reviews with these folks.
And they're kind of compiling the work. It's like if we want the report, we can ask for them, and they'll come in and give us the data. And we're asking them to basically do, and if with this addition of the state goals, the prior section, I think it covers what they want. I kind of get what they're trying to do, they're just trying to, keep this as front of mind, but I think it just creates busy.
I just remember one graphic which showed that the states with the most EPA infrastructure deployed in California and Vermont are doing really great relative to the rest of the country.
Yeah. And you think it's because of the reporting we're requiring?
We have been number one per capita for a long
Yeah,
time.
per capita is the way to go.
So, section 23, which begins on page 34, line 7, requires the Agency of Ag in consultation with agencies of transportation, commerce, community development, and other entities to prepare written recommendations on what regulations, if any, should be placed on publicly available EDSE, including both EDSE that's owned and EDSE that's not owned and operated by an electric distribution utility. There are certain items that it needs to address, including, that would be on page 34, line 16. Clear explanations for regulatory recommendations regarding EDSE, trade professionals, fees, penalties, appeals, the number of affected EDSE and trade professionals, projected revenues and program costs, initial findings regarding EDSE tolerances and non-compliant EDSE, and plans for education and outreach in advance of the implementation of any regulations or enforcement. Those recommendations are due no later than November 15th of this year. And then on page 35, line 6, subsection B, says that notwithstanding anything that might authorize regulation of EDSE not owned by an electric distribution utility, the state shall not implement any regulatory program or take any enforcement action related to EDSE regulation before that report is filed. And I do not know the origin of this requirement, and I imagine that Michelle does.
I do.
I think we talked about it a little before. It seems like there's some value here, but is there parts of it that you guys?
So I think, the House had put this in there after, I think, consultation with the members of the, some of the members of the interagency EDSE team. There's, as you all have recognized, it took a long time for NIST to come up with their standards for how we're gonna measure the kilowatt hour, which measures regulation. They've come up with the standard. The equipment has been delayed because of supply chain issues. So Ag hasn't even received their first piece of equipment. They
Well, we're gonna hear from Ag tomorrow.
Yeah, you're gonna hear from Ag tomorrow. You authorized a couple staff people last year to run the program. I think that the interagency team it has just been concerned that it's not clear how the outreach and education around the program is going to be deployed
Right.
to the providers of the EDSE.
And who is gonna do it?
Yeah, who and how it's going to be done, and that it's done in a manner that helps the regulated entity understand what they will be up against, because this industry is very important to us in terms of being able to successfully deploy the programs we're working on. And so this, and Steve Collier from Ag and I have met, and so I think we will be working towards the objectives that are in this language, and you'll hear from Mark tomorrow more about it. So he can better articulate how they go about standing up a new program and communicating with regulated entities in advance of issuing any fines or against regulated entities, that sort of thing. We just want to maintain good relationships with the regulated entities.
Okay, so you're fine with the language?
Yeah.
Oh, so it's not being kept open in,
I don't think,
well,
we should
testimony?
keep it open just for the testimony.
okay, that's probably okay.
A shorter T-bill this year.
It does seem shorter, yeah.
Let's make it longer. What do we want to throw in?
Yeah, we have a list. Trying to see how much of it already we can do. Shall we?
So section 24, which is page 35, beginning on line 12, Public Utility Commission already has the requirement of submitting a report next January regarding electric distribution utility rate design. And this,
So we got language from Greg, for PUC, remember? Didn't we? Remember, were you here in the room that day that they
no,
testified?
but this is what I know Anthea was in touch with the PUC and negotiated with them, because it was a much longer section before. So I don't know if,
24.
correct, I don't know if what you received is this or something entirely different.
So they came in after this and we were asking about it. And at first they were like, well, we could do this, but then Greg Faber basically said, if you want to have some language that changes, that kind of makes it more of what they can do. Because this, I thought it was excessive to have the report deal with all line extension tariffs, because there's a lot of line extension tariffs that won't have anything to do with electric charging.
Okay, so should I look for whatever, did he give it to you in writing?
Send it to Megan and then it's here.
Oh, okay, what day
Greg
is it?
Faber.
Oh, it's an email?
Maybe just email it
You
to
got it
them.
through CC.
Oh, I got it too.
Oh, you did get it, okay.
You know what, it's the wrong, he sent it to my Agency of Education address,
Oh, you're old.
so I didn't get it.
Yeah, you're probably.
No wonder I didn't see it.
So you probably typed in your name and,
Print this just so you have it.
Oh, that would be awesome,
Forward it
thank
to
you. Either forward it or
yeah,
print it is wonderful. Okay, so 24 needs to be amended with this language.
yeah, and I haven't looked at that, so I'll just leave it open.
Oh, so you don't know if you want his language or not, or you do know?
I don't know, I haven't actually read it.
Striking things out. It looks similar to the core, just tweaking a couple of things.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So that'll be, keep it open for the PUC language.
Shall I go ahead and make the changes and highlight the changes on
Yeah,
on this?
highlighted
Okay.
changes would be good. Okay, so we'll make some changes there. Section 25, mobility service guide, the oral.
So this is requiring the Agency of Transportation to consult with other entities, and it goes down through page 8, I believe, to develop a web-page-based guide to outline the different mobility service models that could be considered for deployment in Vermont. And then beginning on line 11 of page 36, there are certain minimum requirements for that webpage guide. Definitions of the program types or options, such as car sharing, mobility for all, microtransit, and others that meet the goals that are in subsection A above. The second one is information related to existing initiatives, including developmental and pilot programs that meet any of the program types or options defined above in subdivision 1. And information related to any pertinent studies or reports, whether completed or ongoing, related to those program types. Top of page 37, the web-based guide would also provide details of other existing programs. I'm sorry, I just noticed that I keep writing something, okay. Other existing programs that may impact the program design. And I noted that when you talked about this a couple of weeks ago, Senator Kitchell said something about or that may complement and be enhanced by the programs. And maybe I should talk with her if that is something you want to pursue, because when I tried to revise this language to show to her, I really wasn't able to figure out how I would go about doing that. Not grammatically, but I wasn't really sure what would be being compared or enhanced in this particular instance. So would you, I guess I should talk with Senator Kitchell about that.
I guess the one part that I'm a little concerned of is section 4 on page 37. where it says for each possible program type or option defined, you have to have the range of capital, facilities, costs, all this other data. Which, but if we're talking about a website, do they want all that information on the website? 1, 2, 3, 4. It seems like that isn't information that you'd really want to have on a website.
So, Senator Pacheco, I think the idea here is that energy committees, sometimes communities, sometimes organizations, may not understand all the different things that we deploy in our system statewide for mobility. And this would give them a better understanding of how a particular type of system works, what the sort of range of costs to stand up and operate a system would be. So this would be very broad information that would help guide them to ask deeper questions of staff, that sort of thing.
So if they say, we want microtransit, you're like, well,
Yeah.
here's more information before you get too
Right,
excited.
here's what it might cost your town as the match share, if you could even get it, and that sort of thing.
Would you want to change the language on page 37, line 6, so that it's broader rather than additional details outlining, or does the outlining make it broad enough?
I think it's broad enough. We're gonna bring back what we think is reasonable, or we're gonna do what we think is reasonable.
You're creating a reasonable website and you're giving an oral presentation.
Yeah.
So you're okay.
And if it isn't what was asked for, they'll specify more.
Okay, so we're gonna close out section 25. Do you want to pose your question to Senator Kitchell now that she's here, Donna, because nobody remembered?
Sure. This is about section 25, and it's the web-based guide to potential mobility service models that could potentially be deployed in Vermont. And page 36, beginning on line 11, it starts to talk about at a minimum, the guide is required to do certain things. At the top of page 37, you had some comments about this the last time you talked about it. It says that one of the other things, it's because it's talking about potential programs, and it says details of other existing programs that may impact those potential program designs, such as certain things. And you said something about complementing or being enhanced. And so I kind of wanted to understand, I have a general idea what you're getting at, but I wanted to understand specifically what you're getting at so that I could draft that.
Well, I guess what I was saying is, based on what we see, there's a desire, you see a need, I'm gonna create something new in parallel.
Right.
So what I really wanted was, if they're developing that, details of existing programs, not that may impact, that would, provide a foundation or a basis or be a complementary resource. In other words, it builds on what already exists. It doesn't create a new parallel structure, and I don't know how to explain it better than that.
Okay, I think I get that.
It's sort of like a duplication of services. And so it builds on what is currently funded and it resources in place and does not duplicate
Okay.
those efforts. I don't know.
Do you want to include this impacting program design as well, or
No,
take some input instead of
No,
that?
instead of,
Okay. All right.
yeah, that may impact the program design.
So take that out and
Yeah.
replace it with being the foundation for or complementary to new program design. Okay.
To, of existing programs that can because I don't want to duplicate or compete. Maybe I should say that more, maybe I should say it that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Complement rather than compete.
Duplicate or compete. Okay. Thank you. That makes it much clearer.
Sorry, I go on.
Okay. Do a bunch of things that you all like.
I'm in a weakened state.
We got their flower and garden club come in and somebody want to talk about something.
Right. This is, all I can say is when all the committees save everything to the last minute and stuff is still
Yeah.
coming out from finance to come to me, it is absolutely crushing, I guess, to expect a committee to take a complex bill and think we can get it out on a Friday afternoon, the same day it gets referred to us. And that's what's happening. And it is just hard on the committee to do that and think you're doing justice to a bill. So when you get hit with 12, 15 bills, and some of them coming in on the last 2 days of crossover, creates an impossible workload for the appropriations committee, and that's exactly what's happening to us. We have 2 bills still to come out of finance that have got to come over, and they're very significant bills.
We're not leaving today until we get it.
I know, but the problem
That means
is,
we
have them tomorrow. And what's tomorrow, Friday? Am I gonna bring in my committee on a Saturday or a Monday?
Can you do it on Tuesday and then just get a rules override?
Well, we
We can get rules.
or some things just, maybe they're so controversial or difficult, they just will have to wait for another session.
Some pretty influential people on the appropriations committee. I bet you can get that rules exemption.
Probably, but I'm just saying is that I'm sorry I had to leave, but there are just a couple of bills that we've got to figure out how to move forward.
So
So
we're
it's not,
not closing out section 25.
So maybe I have another proposal. Anything that carries has to go to finance before it comes to appropriation has to be a week earlier. So finance has to give it out to give us time, not make the deadline the same for both money committees.
Right.
If they let me come back next year, I'd also propose the second week of crossover, you should just have all 4 sessions start in the morning, because the afternoon are the money committees, and they're the ones that are time pressured, so we should be having floor at 10 this morning.
Right. Yeah, just do like a 10:30.
Because this is the crunch in the money committees this week, and you need more time.
Well, we probably should have done that, but
Sometimes we do that at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So,
it sounds like section 25, you basically are okay with, but I'm gonna make some amendments for, okay, got it.
control change.
Okay, section 26, I have a copy here if you'd like to see it. When you talked about it last time, there is session law from several years ago that creates a mobility and transportation innovations grant program, although they talk about it differently and don't use those exact words. And this section was supposedly expanding that a bit by making it clearer that the awards are available for both capital and operational costs, and also having an expanded application period that is defined on page 18, beginning on, page 38, beginning on line 10. The last time you talked about it, you said, why do we have these 2 session law pieces? Why don't we have just one piece that's in statute and it has all of the information together? And also, instead of having this prescribed application period, you have 4 months. So I worked with those 2 pieces of session law. Well, this piece of proposed session law and the other session law created something. I ran it by Michelle. We did a little bit of changing around, so because I didn't understand it, I've got it. We could talk about it, or you could wait until you do all of your new stuff.
We'll wait until we do all the new stuff, so
Okay.
this is still gonna be open.
Okay, and you're gonna look at a new draft that I've got.
Section 27, the rail plan.
Yeah, maybe I want to add something about, build on existing programs in that section too with grants. Because I could see that you could get a lot of grant applications that you would want to have that as a criteria. Do you want to fund it? And the way it's written on line 6 on that, grant awards, you don't expand new, you expand existing. So the expand is in the wrong place.
Expand, create new or expand existing.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we talked about last time, plus what you just said, I'll have that the next time you have it come in. Section 27 is regarding the new Vermont Rail Plan, which is something that is being developed. And on page 39, there are some additional things that the House would like that plan to consider. One is adding additional daily service on the Vermonter for some or all of the service area. Second is expanding service on the Valley Flyer to provide increased service on the Vermonter route. Subsection B is something separate. It's not part of the plan. It's requiring the Agency of Transportation to consult with Amtrak and the State Amtrak Intercity Passenger Rail Committee
Which they're doing now, right?
on on passenger education and of insufficient capacity for bicycle storage. And subsection C, which begins on line 9, page 39, requires the agency to provide an oral update on the development of that rail plan in general and the requirements above in A and B.
So when is the new rail plan supposed to be completed?
We have to complete that every 5 years, and we're just starting the process, so this fits in with.
No, so I was just wondering what,
Let's
We're
do
fine
it
with
like
this.
in 25 or something. So there should,
I'd love to know if this is feasible to add, as this is just aspirational things to consider. I have continually gotten emails from constituents that use the Greyhound and the Spirit bus lines where there's no indoor waiting space for them and they are out in the cold and the elements waiting for a bus to drive them to Boston. Can we add to this that rail stations to look for and try to incentivize ways that any publicly funded Amtrak train stations might simultaneously be encouraged in some way or another to integrate with other bus services for those trying to get to other segments, both with train and then bus service to another area. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
so like, since there's already a facility there, could they,
With amenities and a roof and heat.
They don't have fully staffed personnel. You would have to because we bring in personnel just before and just after the train arrives. And so in some cases, they have other public functions, and so they're open at other hours. But in other cases, they don't. And so we would have to find money to pay for people to come open these up for the bus.
This is just a plan to talk about ways to integrate bus connectivity with train stations.
I don't think the rail plan is the right place for that. But, you know, it's certainly, I think we're just starting the update of the public transit policy plan, and I could ask Ross to incorporate that item into that process.
what's it called, the public transit?
Public transit policy plan.
Maybe it's just Burlington specific, but like one Main Street, I wish that they could go and wait at one Main Street get dropped off from their friend.
That one is open, most of the time.
I thought they weren't allowed, the Greyhounds aren't allowed to park there.
It's great, they need to work with Greyhound to allow Greyhound to have that be a pickup spot.
Well, has Greyhound reached out to us?
No, the constituents are reaching out to me, and so I just don't know how to connect pieces. When I invite Greyhound in, I don't know how to.
Well, Ross could just call Greyhound and see what they've done so far, and then coordinate with Dan to figure out like how we make that happen.
Sure, this is not just Chittenden County, this happened somewhere down in Wyndham County, where they had a bus stop, but then like the property got sold, and then when they changed the property and they like redid the sidewalks, they took out the bus stop. And then people showed up and like, where the bus stop, the new owner just said like, I didn't want a bus stop there. And they didn't have to keep it, and so people are just waiting out in the rain when there used to be a little shelter. But so that somebody else brought that up to me about, is there something the state can do to kind of like require stops or require, if there's a stop there that you can't tear it down. But it's just like, whenever it was built originally, there wasn't a proper easement ever done or something.
I don't think there are any love notes in here either.
We want to be less car centric, we need to be more multimodal in our distribution points.
Yeah.
The airport used to do it, but that doesn't necessarily serve the downtown population of Burlington.
And they still do, right?
Well, we just barely got the airport re-engaged on allowing Greyhound to pull over where they used to pull over, and so now that's back on track.
So people go to the airport that aren't even flying.
Take the bus.
But, and then also.
Oh, no, they like get off the bus there.
Some people get off the bus there to catch a plane and vice versa.
Right, but you can also just get off the bus there, and then is there another bus that takes you to downtown?
Yeah, city
It's a straight shot.
'Cause I met somebody, I was like, they weren't flying anywhere, but they were there. I was like, and now I understood like why they were there.
So let me have Ross get you some information
Sure,
on
it's a
that.
matter
later.
of.
So why don't we have Ross,
Hand those to Russ.
You wanna have Ross come
we
in?
could have Russ come in, Megan.
Even better.
Will it be about this, or will it be because you said it'd be better in the public transit policy plan?
It could go in I don't know if it would, it's not the real plan section, there isn't really a section for it, so maybe, it would maybe be additional language, or maybe we just,
Update on the public transit policy plan.
yeah,
You're right.
and the issues with intermodal bus stops.
And how do you refer, public transportation, usually municipally funded buses, these are private carriers, so I don't know how to use the right terminology, but to have our public transit solutions be accessible to and open to integrating with private carriers for longer distance
Right,
buses.
how can we support that?
So people aren't waiting out in the rain when they're trying to get to Boston.
All those private services, well, except for like DATCO and stuff, all the Greyhound services are subsidized by us.
Okay.
So
Oh, they are,
they're part of our network.
okay,
So Russ can explain that.
okay, so we'll just have Russ come in. and
Is
talk about it.
DATCO still here?
Haven't seen a bus from
No.
DATCO in years.
Zatco, I don't even know what that is.
They had the buses from, in Burlington, they pick them up on the curb in Boston and New York.
It's like the kind of dollar bus.
Oh, like a
ride,
megabus?
Megabus, yeah, real one.
There's another provider, the name's escaping me.
For a while, yeah, when Megabus came, I remember saying, oh, this is gonna be big, but it didn't seem to. No. I want somebody like Dartmouth coach up further.
But, yeah, but the Dartmouth coach stop in Hanover is just an outside thing. The bus stop is in Lebanon. It's really lovely now. the terminal.
Yeah, no, it's super nice.
Yeah, you took your daughter down there in the
I use it
middle
a
of the
lot.
night.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's, but you have to drive down to Lebanon, so it'd be nice. if Either Dartmouth coach or somebody like them was up for,
Would be very nice. I'm not sure what the market is.
yeah, that's the problem.
Dartmouth College and the medical center is a fairly big
Yeah.
market there.
And
It's a
it's
big-
far enough
go to
enough.
Logan Airport.
They have the whole kind of catchment area and everybody that can drive there. So I'm not proposing we add anything like that.
So section 27 is okay then?
Yeah.
I think it's okay, but we're just gonna talk about Ross separate. from that.
Yeah, that's
We
a
can
different.
close out.
27.
Section 28.
28, the last time you talked about this, you considered deleting it. It is a replacement for the Vermont State Design Standards, and it's when preparing that replacement, the agency needs to do certain things, beginning on page 39, line 19. Release a draft of that replacement and related documents not later than January 1 of 2026. Page 40 at the top, conduct not less than 4 public hearings across the state. Page 40, line 4, provide publicly available responsiveness summary detailing public participation activities conducted in developing the final draft. And it has certain things, including a description of the matters on which members of the public or stakeholders or both were consulted, a summary of the views of participating members of the public and stakeholders, and significant comments, criticisms, and suggestions received by the agency, and the agency's specific responses to those.
It's kind of like a rule, putting the requirements of a rule making. Here, sounds like.
And then page 40, line 13 is large group specialty focus groups and one-on-one meetings with key stakeholders to have that kind of stakeholder engagement. And then there are listed of particular, there is a list of particular entities to be consulted. And then page 41, line 9, the agency is required to provide oral updates on the progress in February of 2025 and February of 2026. And just a reminder that the draft is due
So
January 2026.
could you, first of all, I'm not sure people are clear on what design standards really are. And if they are engineering and standards for the amount of sub-base you've got to have and the type of paving and, whatever. It seems to me that that this is a very elaborate, unless we have a lot of engineers and people with background, I can understand probably the design may have, I don't know what design standards include. Probably complete streets would have to be part of it, but I would think it's only a portion of it. So it seems like this is a very prescriptive, very detailed requirements that we don't normally put into statute relative to, it's more general in terms of, conduct and, whatever. So, but first of all, could you help us, or me, refresh me of what design standards entails and the extent to which this elaborate structure of input relates and does not relate, I guess, is what I'm struggling with.
So, Senator Kitchell, I guess I would ask if we could defer this conversation till the 11:30 timeframe when I'm supposed to talk about reports very briefly, and Jeremy Reed is going to be here, and he's going to talk about the 10G report stuff you're interested in, and since he's the chief engineer, I think he would be best suited to talk about the design standards and what they entail.
But I think there's parts of the design standards that people care about, or definitely people listed here, and then there's a whole bunch of them they're not gonna care about.
Yeah.
Like the height of the guardrail, but I think like how wide the shoulder is, or like when certain standards are applied, then I think that's where it's gonna.
I know, well, I'm just wondering if we could be a little more precise. I don't know, maybe.
I think what'll happen though is like they'll go through this process, but they'll really only get comments on the kind of complete streets aspect of it, but.
Well, this is a lot though, in terms of, having even one-on-one meetings. I've never prescribed one-on-one meetings in the 20 years I've been here.
Yeah,
So what I can say is, we've engaged with VHB to undertake this effort. The project manager is Wayne Simmons.
Were they doing the whole standards or just this public outreach part?
The whole standards, and they have Tool Design also engaged to help with the public outreach.
Is that VHB stand for something, or they just go by the acronym?
They just go by the acronym now, VHB. When I met with Wayne last week, one of the things he did let me know was he's planning to do some one-on-one sessions with some people, the key stakeholders, in addition to some of this other public outreach that is occurring. We worked with the House to make sure that this language, similar to some language last year, duplicates what we already plan to do. And so I do agree with you, Senator Kitchell, this sort of is rather directive in terms of telling the administration how to do their work versus what the outcome is we'd like. But at any rate, we are okay with this language.
Because it basically is the process you would do anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we would have done a responsiveness summary like they do through the NEPA process, but it's not gonna add that much to the
VHB
effort.
can do it.
Well, yeah, we pay him to do it,
Right,
but
yeah,
yeah.
pay him.
So, at any rate, that's a little additional background, but Jeremy can speak more to the content of the design.
Yeah, I'd just like to know.
Okay.
I can understand the complete streets issue around the extent to which side lanes are added, those kinds of things. But I would think there's a whole lot that gets into very technical and engineering standards and design that, unless you're an engineer, maybe there's some engineers out there that would come in and say, we disagree with that, but I don't know.
It has happened in the past.
So do you want to keep that section open after we talk to Jeremy, or are we okay with it
I say let it go,
We're gonna close it out.
even though, well, I don't know, I mean, the problem is unless you wanted to isolate certain parts of it for public comment, that gets really complicated, so maybe it's better to just put the whole thing out and then people will comment on the probably very small number of sections.
Motion.
Page 40, line 1. Would it be about not fewer than 40?
That would be,
Is that correct?
I would think.
Correct.
Yeah.
that would be it. Do you dream about this?
It jumps right off at
I
us.
think it's much ado about nothing, but it was brought as a forum.
Addison.
So,
We'll close it out except for the grammar thing.
okay, so this is okay, except for it not closed, very good, okay.
But it would be nice to just get a refresher what's gonna be in the,
Yeah, because you only do the design standards every,
The last time we did it was, I don't know, 20-something years ago, and the only reason, as I understand historically, that it ended up in statute was because there perhaps were, engineers of the agency who were not, like, interested in the direction the design standards were heading, and so it ended up becoming a legislative opportunity.
what is the Vermont Transportation Equity Framework? Who, stakeholder? Who's the stakeholder for the Vermont Transportation Equity Framework?
So we developed the
To me,
Vermont.
that's like a, I don't know,
capitalized, it seems like
Yes.
it's some entity.
so,
So it's not an entity, it's a document.
so, but it says stakeholders.
Yeah, I don't know,
Stakeholders that created the framework.
well, we created the framework through a stakeholder engagement process, and I don't think stakeholders is the right term there.
Participants?
No, it's a document that directs the agency how to engage with
Right.
our equity communities. That's not the right term either, but,
Maybe it belongs some other place, I don't know.
So you'll send on us some language.
we will work on that together.
It just doesn't fit really. I understand really what it is a sort of a blueprint or a structure that
Exactly.
you would evaluate.
So we're not really closing out 28 because we need to sort of a couple little changes, but it's basically closed except for some edits.
And was that where you were talking about that, Senator Kitchell, was that page 41, line 8?
Yes.
That reference, okay.
A framework isn't a stakeholder. And maybe stakeholder, actually, maybe it's better to do, I don't know. You've laid out so many, maybe you just need to say, get rid of the transportation equity framework and reference it somewhere else and just put, and other stakeholders, because these are all organizations.
I think
We're all
we-
stakeholders, this list is stakeholders.
Yeah, I know.
I think at the beginning of the word, on line 13, page 40, if we just said, in keeping with the recommendations in the Vermont Transportation
like that.
Equity Framework,
Yeah.
conduct directly, blah, blah, blah.
I think that's, would be a logical place.
Okay.
Got it. And then changing the line 8 on page 41 to other stakeholders.
Yeah.
Okay.
If there are any, in case we've missed anybody.
We have a lot listed.
And
You can't just say others,
It's just-
we gotta give them a title.
so we'd get rid of that and other stakeholders, right?
Right.
Okay.
That you could find.
That we have neglected and are gonna feel left out.
An ad in the paper. Seeking. Okay. Let's see if we can finish this before we go on break. Section 29.
Section 29 makes a couple of amendments to existing statute concerning complete streets. And both of the changes, although they come up in different sections and in different contexts, are talking basically about the same thing. And that is that on page 42, it is saying that part of the concept of a complete street principle includes includes projects, I guess, that are desired by the municipality, and this is on page 42, line 15 and 17, that implement a street design for purposes of calming and slowing traffic. And also that support land uses that develop in tandem and evolve in tandem with transit and accessibility. So there's that concept that this is part of the principles of complete streets, but then that same concept is over on page 43. This says when projects don't incorporate complete streets principles, then the site manager has to have written documentation of why this is not going to incorporate the principles supported by documentation, except that if those are not being done because of what the municipality has required, then that does not need to be included in the documentation supporting non-using complete street principles. That was a very convoluted way of saying it, but I think it's saying that I said
do a written response.
They don't
that
have
involves the municipality.
Right, if it's municipality, you don't have to justify why you're not, including it.
So we're adding that 2402B4B on page 42, but then on page 43, we're saying they don't have to respond to that.
In the same way they
In the
would
same
for other
In the same way,
projects.
right.
I think 4B is a little confusing, but I don't think the agency feel like they understand exactly what that means, because support the land uses that develop and evolve in tandem with transit accessibility. I think that makes sense, but including those that provide enhanced benefits such as through improved health access, employment service. I just am not sure exactly what that means, but I guess you'll find out when you go to a project in a municipality. Does the municipality want to make these desires clear, right? So I think this is the general idea.
So this is an okay as it is, or you want to try to?
You're okay with
Clarify
this
it.
because the municipality is going to let you know, and then it doesn't really change the complete
Yeah, I
streets.
mean, we're still under the same guidance principles in terms of when we say yes and no. So,
And you don't have to add it to your written thing.
So it's,
gratuitous, I mean.
yes,
Right.
you've been around me too long.
People want to have more calming and slowing in these designated centers.
It
And I
seems
think
like-
that goes to the whole thing about speed limits too, where they want the speed to be lower. The state doesn't really want to impede
Because you
that.
can't, because the MUTCD requires the traffic study, and oftentimes they're 25 mile per hour on a major Route 2 or Route 5, cannot be supported. So there are times when, in fact, what the municipality would like, for obvious reasons, because my fear is I get run over on Route 2, but
Yeah, but traffic light, yeah.
yeah, but unfortunately, I'm above the traffic light, and so the traffic comes barreling over the hill by the tennis court, and the traffic light is in the center of town. So, I think we can let it go. It's just,
We're closing out section
there's
29.
only so much you wanna, it's sort of like we have to put something in to show that we've had the big impact, I guess.
Section 30 is for the one we talked about the other day. This is a big report.
Supported by a consultant on emissions reduction.
This is the one that.
And this has
Jane-
findings.
This is about findings, it's a big report, the treasurer is about, did we want to ask the treasurer to come in?
I think we did, because the treasurer was referenced.
Yeah, the treasurer's referenced a couple times. The treasurer has to be consulted, and then the treasurer also has to do something else.
Yeah, there's a recommendation, I think it's
And the state treasurer can use.
subsection E, I think. Yeah, it's at the bottom of page 48, the top of page 49. The written analysis
Right.
completed shall be provided to the treasurer,
Treasurer's gonna make a written
and
recommendation
then, yeah.
On revenues,
regarding any viable approaches to revenues for transportation. Megan, did you reach out to them and they?
I'll try again.
Who did you contact?
Their scheduler.
But you could also try to talk Ashland, Dolan.
Doyon,
Oh,
Doyon.
yeah, with the Y in there.
That's a good one.
Okay.
But I'll try again.
This is really kind of
Will you CC me?
crosswalking what we heard A&R the other day, and the reference to the treasurer. So this is
Same thing.
same thing.
It is what we, so we'll keep it open just to hear from the treasurer.
It's kind of unusual that the treasurer should, have revenue projections. I mean, how do you do?
Well, remember when Beth Pierce did that with clean water? The treasurer didn't really have anything to do with it, just
No.
transferring money for clean water, but they led that effort.
I remember sitting over joint fiscal with Tim Ash, and we worked out a funding stream of allocating a certain amount of rooms and meals for clean water, and that was all that was really holding it up, is how you find the money to, in that case, to support the TMDL and the federal requirement.
So you did it, but Beth Pierce got all the credit.
Well, apparently, but we came up with the money.
That goes on for quite a while.
Okay.
Section 31.
Page 50, line 18.
Yeah, I think, well, we're gonna leave it open for the treasurer,
Okay,
basically.
so, whoever should rise.
31, what is the,
This is the Better Connections Grant Program, has been in existence since about 2015, I believe. There doesn't seem to be anything in session law that really defines it or creates it, or that I could find at least.
you asked for?
We just do this for our own, it's like $300,000 a year.
And so this would put it into statute.
you're okay with that?
We're fine.
What is that? Section 31. Section 32.
Section 32
A
is
study.
transportation funding study with the consultant.
So
Yeah,
I took from the chair Coffey's intent or conversation that she respects the VPT study, but she also thinks it didn't necessarily consider the municipal revenues that could be collected through expanding assessment capabilities. But I'm hesitant to do yet a third study, because we had a study, we got another study on this, and now this is a third one. When I feel like what we just got was pretty informative. It pointed us at the ad valorem revenues, it pointed us at the additional surcharges, the rental tax. I don't think the utility thing makes sense. So I mean, if we want to specifically just consider as a legislature to give local towns the ability, public transportation entities the ability to send bills to municipalities that are served by public transportation. I don't know if we need a study to draft language as such and then put it forward and debate it, but I feel like that's why she was motivated to have a third study.
is the whole study that the treasurer's involved in? That's just transportation funding in general for like.
This is broad transportation funding above and beyond public transit, which is the study you just got this year.
What it comes down to,
Oh, I'm sorry.
we don't, we have a study when we really know the answer. Raising revenues is really tough. And the question is there something magical out there that we haven't thought of? And I think the answer is no. The question is there the political will to raise the gas tax, for example? Is there a political will to assess municipalities? I would suggest not. We turn ourselves inside and out to give money to the, as I said, to towns. We've taken away money from, the House is proposing to take money away from maintenance in order to give it to towns. And so in one breath, we're saying we need to help the towns. In the next breath, well, how do we extract more money from the towns? They're really worried because the only place the towns have it is property owners. That's where municipal revenues come from. So to me, a study is our standard way when we know that something needs to be done, but we really don't want to do it. And so there's got to be something magical out there that doesn't impact anybody or anything. And I have yet to find anything that does that. So to pay a consultant.
Is that what you do?
Yeah, that's
That's what you do.
estimate the switch costs.
So, it just seems to me,
We know where the possible revenues are, we just need to debate it in the legislature.
yeah.
Right.
And I mean, we could ask, you know, and I assume, obviously, NCSL has maintained, an inventory of different, revenue, options that other states have exercised. We could take a look at them. Obviously, that comes into some of the things that we talked about. I don't know whether spending money to hire a consultant to tell us what we pretty much already know. The question is there the political will to do it? It's gonna get us anywhere. But if we can't make a decision or we find it difficult, we either have a study or a work group. And that's our way of saying, oh, we're recognizing it, we've done something. So,
We already have some, like you said, NCLS could tell us what other states are doing.
yeah,
You already did the NBUF revenue projections, we have those. Right, there's nothing in here, it seems like, oh, we don't have this data. So you were like, to the House, yeah, whatever, but we're gonna
Please tight, $100,000, I don't think we need this.
No comment.
Okay,
I guess I just see it as a classic, we know something needs to be done. We hope there's something that we haven't thought of, which I don't think is probably realistic. And so the question is, do you want to make a decision? And,
So do we have the political will to strike this?
yes.
yes, I think we should. It's just like, we know what's out there. The question is.
We're already doing is funding things specifically to one part of the transportation, really. Yeah, we've already gotten 3 studies, a 4th study is in there.
There's a different outcome, it's just gonna be the definition of insanity.
Well, we had something in quotes on our blackboard, we don't have whiteboards, and it was something like, when we can't make a decision, we
Right.
authorize a study.
So effective dates, we'll deal with that later. So let's take a quick break. And then I don't think we'll probably need a whole half hour for Dan to talk about the lease, but we might start, so, 10 minutes, 5 minutes
We're
after.
reporting this out today.
We have things to add.
Yeah, so we're offline.
We're going offline. Coming back at 10:35 to talk